I'll do the donk.
Like
Just
we
brother and sister
I will
hang out.
follow your Donk.
Yeah, chatting about media. Lol.
No!
Donk.
Report!
Okay, so here we are again, Donk Report, Season 2. So now we're doing his Dark Materials by Philip Pullman, which is extremely dank so far. We're going to do one video for each book again. And so this is for the Northern Lights. Which...
The Golden Compass.
Do you know what's up with that?
What?
You know, like, it was the Northern Lights, and then suddenly it was the Golden Compass. Was that, like, I'm not sure if it was just, like, for American audiences, or if they officially changed it so that all the titles kind of fit together.
Yeah, I kind of had assumed that it was what they called the movie, so then they started calling the book that, so that it was, like, connected. But it totally makes sense for it to be called the Golden Compass, because then they're all about a magical item.
I know, which is really cool, but I still feel kind of like it's like not the real one, like it's like not the authentic title.
Yeah, it feels like the Philosopher's Stone, the Sorcerer's Stone, you know?
Which is so crazy, because like it's not about whether it's a philosopher, it's a specific like mythological object, you know, like it's not the Philosopher's Stone, you know, it's like capital P, capital S, you know.
Yes. But why is it even called the Philosopher's Stone? It should be called like the Alchemist's Stone. You know?
Well, philosophy and alchemy used to kind of be like the same thing pretty much, and what has become philosophy is like kind of like a watered down academicized version of philosophy, I think, because like philosophy used to also be intertwined with like geometry and science basically.
True.
Yeah. But yeah, I've got a bit of like a stigma with like Americanized things, like things being like simplified for an American audience, or like it's like you always just have to change something, you know, like you always just gotta do your own little twist on it.
Yeah, totally. Even when they like find like a TV show or something from another country, they're like, well, let's just make our own version of it. And it's
like The Office.
Yeah, but it's like, if you think it's good, just
watch it. Yeah, like making like American versions of like anime and shit. It's like, no, it's good because it is what it is now. It's not good when you've made it.
Oh.
What's that?
You're like cutting out a bit.
I'm not cutting out for me, so it's all good. I heard once that like sometimes they make stuff in American accents when it doesn't even make sense, because American audiences won't watch it if it's in a different accent, and it'll be subtitled even if it's in an English accent, but they won't watch it with the subtitles because that's too much hassle or something.
That's just ridiculous.
Anyway.
There's this real funny like Australian TV show that they tried to make an American version of it, but like the point of it is that it's really Australian humor, you know? So it's like it did really badly in the US because it's not funny when it's like watered down American version of Australian comedy. It's like
also just this vibe that like you're always searching for something to produce and something to make, rather than just making what comes along when there's a reason to make it, you know? Like there's so many trash movies because they've got like a quota or whatever of movies to make, or books or whatever. And it's like, bro, we could just lose all that, just have the good stuff that people are like have the urge to get out there. Anyway,
yes,
back to the topic, which we haven't even started on yet. Man, this was so refreshing and dank, like, to read after Harry Potter.
Yeah, it's so much cooler.
It is actually so much cooler. It's insane that Harry Potter is like the kids series, and this is like a sideline kind of like, oh yeah, it also exists.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, part of it's probably that it's like Harry Potter's just like simpler, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you more have to think about these books.
Well, I don't know if I did at the time.
I think I thought about them more than I thought about Harry Potter.
But that's because there's stuff to think about, not because you have to. Like, it's like, it stimulates your imagination
Yeah, I
so
guess
much
so.
that you're like, whoa, why is that like that, you know? The differences between, like, their world, her world, and our world. And, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, all those real subtle differences just do it for me so hard. Like, it's so artfully done. And the storytelling is so artfully done as well.
Yeah, and it's so cool. He's done it so well. The like immersion, like Lyra trying to imagine what life would be like without a demon or something. And it's like, whoa, I really feel like I totally get how you would feel, but I don't have a demon.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I can't. I just can't. I just can't even.
Oh my god.
It's so real. Yeah, it's so like it's a world. You know, Harry Potter's like, oh, but wouldn't it be nice if there was magic? And that's pretty much it. Like, there's no world really. Like, it's like
Yeah.
this world, but with some quirky joke magic and shit.
Yeah, it's like a way more thought out world, you know? Like he's thought about all of it.
He's got something to say. He's got ideas and views and like insight into the world. Like, there's so much insight into reality itself explored through these ideas about reality, the differences in history, like the differences in science, but the similarities too, like how like they're basically doing quantum physics, but like it's called philosophy and shit.
Yeah, and like, you know, like in Harry Potter, there's like a bad guy, and he's just like a bad guy. But like the bad guy in this book, like they're antagonists. Yeah, but like they have a purpose and a drive beyond just like power and control, you know? Mm-hmm. Like Lord Asriel was like, I don't want to be told what to do by the Magisterium. I want to like figure this shit out.
Yeah, he's just so ambitious that no one can contain it. He can't contain it.
Yeah, and like curious about what's beyond just their small controlled narrative of their world, you know?
But then ultimately the bad guy is God.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that hasn't happened yet. Oh, whatever. This is spoilers are gonna happen. Yeah, man, there was so much stuff that I didn't remember too. Like, I remembered like all the main points, and like, but there was heaps of stuff that I was like, oh yeah, that's how they get to the north. Like this whole journey that actually takes up most of the book of them, like her traveling with the Egyptians and shit.
Yeah, and I think I only read the books like once or maybe twice, but I haven't read them in like 10 years at least.
Yeah,
but
20
I've
for me.
seen the movie a couple times, so I had like got my memories of it all a bit confused, and I forgot that like all the Bolvanger stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then they go to where the bears live.
Oh fuck, I forgot it too. Svalbard.
Yeah. And then they go to Lord Asriel.
Yeah. I mean, I could kind of see that happening from the beginning, even though I didn't remember it, because like I knew all those things happened, and I had like one really clear memory of him busting his jaw off, busting the other bear's jaw and his tongue lolling out. That really stuck with me for 20 years.
Same. That first bit where you're meeting him and like it describes him putting on his armor and it says that like the only bit exposed is like his lower jaw so he can bite, and I was like, oh my god.
The setup's so rich. It's just so rich, like all the different cultures and like different countries, but also the different cultures within like what I assume is Britain. Like it's called England, but it's like we don't know if it's actually England. You know, like I actually am not sure if it's actually the island of England or if it's a different place that became England. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of assumed it was because England has or had all that like Finland and stuff.
True. You know about that.
I know about that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cultures are so rich, and the whole plot of like Europe being a proper bear, like an instinctual animal bear, and then Yofa or whatever.
Yeah, man, it's
the
so
other guy
rich.
Being like, he wants to be a human. And when Lyra's like, oh, maybe you can only trick a bear when the bear is trying to not be a bear. That's like, ah!
I actually ended up feeling really sorry for Yofa. Because, like, I really felt for him, you know? He, like, got sucked into this trap, and then, like, it's, what's her name? Mrs.
Oh, Coulter.
Mrs. Coulter, yeah. You know, like, she's, like, manipulating him and shit. But I was like, man, that's so what happens. Like, people get sucked into this kind of, like, I don't know, not strictly capitalist, but like hierarchical, competitive kind of like identity mindfuck and shit, like humans do. But like, I was like, man, he was probably deep down like a good bear, you know, like a good guy. But then like he got sucked into this thing, and like, I don't know, I just felt like really sorry for him. That he tried really hard, you know, he tried really hard to become something different, and in the end was just shamed. Yeah, I don't know.
Nah, definitely. He was just used as like a pawn in their game. But also, like, he just obviously was like insecure, you know, and was comparing himself to humans and was like, I want what they've got. But then, like, you know, him and all the other bears, like, actually are then living this, like, horrible existence. That's like,
Yeah, and how, like, they, like, made a nice castle, but then it, like, reeked and shit. It, like, smells like rotting flesh and shit, because it, like, it doesn't fit with their lifestyle.
Yeah, when she says that, like, when she's first going there, the bear is trying to describe all the, like, paintings on the outside of the castle, but they're also like covered in bird shit, and it's like, oh.
And it's like, you know, Lacan's idea, like reconceptualization of the phallus, the concept of the phallus, or like in psychoanalysis, it's like it's like presence. Oh no, it's lack masquerading as presence, you know? Like it's never actually full presence. It's always like presence. No, it's like lack pretending to be presence or whatever. And so all this stuff in Freud that is about like desiring the phallus or like the pride of like masculinity or the dynamic between masculinity and femininity or presence and lack and shit is actually about this, like ultimately it's all lack. Like the whole game, the whole cycle of exchange is about lack. It's not about like you never get something. You're always like trying to get this thing that doesn't exist. And like I really felt like it was that dynamic, and it was like illustrated so well with the bears. Like it's like really wanting this thing, wanting to like experience this human thing, and seeing something out there and desiring this experience, and then in attempting to get it, realizing that there's nothing there, and that like being human is actually mostly suffering and like, I don't know, like, you know, jealousy and like shame and like all this shit that comes with being human.
Yeah.
Being able to be tricked, you know, being able to really like fail.
Yeah, totally.
So deep, bro.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
I liked all the comparing the demons to the armor as well. Thought that was really cool.
That's so rich. That's kind of like a samurai thing too, you know, like the sword is your soul.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was all that stuff about how, like, you know, like part of Yofa's downfall is that his armor was like decorative rather than practical.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
So
you're such a like practical dude.
Yeah, it's like real richness is in like materiality, you know, like material stability or something, not like showy financial wealth or whatever. Okay. Thought I might get a response for that, but whatever.
No, you actually cut out just on that.
Fuck.
Point.
Oh well, it's probably in the
So,
recording.
I don't know what you were talking about.
You have to watch it. You're gonna have to watch the video.
I'll respond next time.
Yeah, you know, we'll do a catch-up session, episode 1.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so like imaginative, but it's not like too imaginative, you know? Like that's why it's realistic. It's not like too fantastical.
Yeah, it's all like pretty based in reality, you know? Like the Egyptians. I really like the Egyptians.
They're so dank. And there's like
They're just,
hints of all these.
Such a good vibe.
Yeah. And then it's like, it's so cool how all this like connections crop up too. Like at first, like they're just mentioned as like kind of like an invasive presence in the world of the kids and their kind of like battles and their politics and shit. And there's the story about how she stole the boat and shit. But then it's like, it turns out that there's like so much more going on there, and she ends up on the journey with them and shit. And then like they've kind of got I don't know if they have their own prophecy about her, but they're kind of like anticipating her importance and shit as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love when I can't even remember what they're trying to talk to her about, but she thinks they're going to tell her off for stealing the boat.
Yeah.
She's like, I never would have like taken the bung out, I promise. Like real cute.
Yeah, the characters are so rich and real too, eh? Like
Yeah.
they just really respond like people would, you know? Like you know that feeling of like thinking you're going to be accused of something and shit.
Yeah. It's so cute. Yeah. Yeah, I love the witches. I always remembered one of the like vivid memories of the book was that bit where they go to see the witches' console.
Yeah.
Consult?
Console?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, you know, she's been talked about forever, but if she knows what she has to do, she won't be able to do it. She just needs to do it on instinct.
Yeah. And then Serafina Picala says that later to like to someone else. It's like everyone knows it. Like everyone's like in on it.
Yeah.
He also just like
I
casually is
found-
like gets her to pick out the pine branch, like as if it's nothing, and then like that's the like seals the deal.
Yeah. I really felt really sad when right at the end and Lyra's talking to Serafina. Is that what happens? But when she's talking about
on the
like
balloon?
yeah, and she's like, you know, like they were in love, but their lives are so much longer, and like now he's an old man, and she was like, he wouldn't want me to see him like that, and it's like, no.
Yeah, and also that it's like they see it
So
as
sad.
fleeting, but it's like it's pain for them, and that like part of their lives is just that they have to learn to live with that pain. It's not like
Yeah.
they're just like, yeah, whatever, I live for hundreds of years, I don't give a shit about your petty human lives. It's like they've still got a real rich humanity, but they just have to accept the difference. It's like,
Yeah. And it's so sad that, like, you know, like they'll have children, and if they're girls, they're witches and they live a really long time as well. And if they're boys, they're not, and they just live like a normal human lifespan.
maybe you could be like the consul or something though.
Yeah, I know, but like you've still only got like 80 or 90 years as opposed to hundreds.
Yeah.
That's still really sad.
Yeah, I kind of like thought that maybe it's like more like a, you know, in like our world, you're not like born a witch, you like get into esoteric shit or whatever. And like, but it's not like that. It's like they're like a separate lineage of witches or something. But yeah, like I was kind of like, up until you actually meet the witches, it's like it's not even really a fantasy world, you know? There's the alethiometer, which is like borderline, like it's like conceivable, you know, like it could be a thing, and it's like whether or not you believe in it, like divination or whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's just witches flying around. It's like, all right, it's a fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, there's demons the whole way through, which is
Yes, but that's kind of like,
fantastical.
but it's kind of spiritual as well, you know, like you could imagine that a different culture on our world, if they believe in things a certain way, like having a spirit animal or whatever, then you can all see them, and the way you talk about seeing something is probably different from culture to culture. So it's kind of like, it's still within the bounds of kind of like, I see them as science fiction books still, even though there's like heavy fantasy elements. Like I still kind of see it as, because it's so rich and it goes so in depth, I'm kind of like, yeah, I think it's still science fiction.
I think, yeah, I think the more fantastic.
Ahem. Ahem. Let's have you saying that again. You think the more fantastical something?
Thing about the demons is like the children's demons, them like changing shape and like that, you know, like it being like your soul or part of your soul is way more like spiritual.
Yeah.
And like the adults, you know, having a representation of what, like, I guess like your temperament or your nature is like represented by an animal is like more real world. But them like changing all the time is more like whimsy.
Yeah, but it's like they're not physical, you know, they're tangible, but they're not really physical. They're kind of like accumulations of energy or whatever. So like even if it was set in our world, you could kind of like theorize that it's just a different way of like, you know, not quite a metaphor, but like a certain way of seeing people as that they have like a spirit animal or something. You know, like some people can see spirits and shit. So it's like, I don't know. But like witches actually physically their body flying around on a broom is kind of like, it's hard to argue that that's not fantasy, you know.
I always wondered, and still wonder, what are like the limitations of the demon, you know? Because like
the distance.
I guess. No. Like in what they can turn into. You know, like there's some people that have like insect demons or whatever. But like, can you then be an ant? And then the other way, like when they're put into that cage and like they can't get out and Pan's trying to turn into all these different animals, it's like, why can you not just turn into like an elephant and break the cage?
Good point. I don't know, like they don't really seem to be able to use force in that way with the transformation, like when they're being held onto by another demon, like the monkey or whatever, Miss Coulter's demon and shit. Even though they're flicking through shapes really quickly, they still seem to be able to hold on. So they don't really seem to be able to break physical boundaries in that way.
Why?
I don't know. But it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like couldn't they turn into like a dinosaur or something and like just eat people?
Yeah, I was wondering that actually, because there's
or a bear
where they say something about demons, which makes it sound like that demons can turn into like mythical creatures as well. Like it isn't just like real world.
Yeah, it's like loose, it's like vaguely implied, right? Like the Vada Coram?
Vada Coram.
Is that his name?
Yes.
His one is like borderline mythical cat, right?
Yeah. Well,
but they mostly
like right at the beginning when they're like playing, like her and the children are playing. Maybe it's when they're like searching for the gobblers or something. But it says something about like.
It does mention something.
Yeah, like the demons turning into something else entirely, you know?
Yeah, but it doesn't really happen again. But it's like, man, it's so cool how like it's used as a device to like show people's quality of spirit or whatever. Like, you know, Father Coram's like a wise man, so he's got this really beautiful cat with like, you know, like almost magical qualities, you know. Yeah,
I was really like, in my memory of them visiting the witch's console, I had like remembered that his demon was a snake, but then had like associated that in my mind with that like he was like sneaky and like did something to kind of fuck them over or something.
Huh. But there's another guy with a snake though who ends up being I think in Will's world. There's a guy who like crops up in Will's world later, I think, who's got a snake, but it's hidden all the time, so it doesn't matter. Like, so he can like walk around in Will's world.
Yeah.
We'll come to that. Have you started reading The Subtle Knife yet?
Nah, I got it out today, but then I started reading Shikasta instead.
Oh, I think I actually read The Subtle Knife first because I was like real attracted to it. Like the book cover, I was like, whoa, what's that? And I think I read it first and like I read some of it and then I went back and I was like, oh, whoa, there's all this shit happening before that, and that's how Lara ends up in that world and shit. But we'll come to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do really like the alethiometer. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Like all that real subtle, like almost magic kind of stuff is really artfully done, I reckon. And like, bro, I'm real fascinated by this like experimental theology or whatever. And like how it's basically quantum physics and like these theories that were just coming out around then, or like since like maybe the 70s or 80s, about like the many worlds or many universes theory and stuff, and like how things could be occupying the same space but like in different quantum arrangements or whatever. And like, but that viewed from a different world is so cool, and that they're exploring it in a different way, but then also the fact that he actually cracks open a gateway to it at the end. But I've got some questions because, like,
Okay.
I mean, obviously, he's dealing with the fact that opening this massive gateway to another universe is having huge effects on the environment. Like, oh shit, no, I started reading this when I. So, maybe we'll deal with that in the next one. But one thing I wanted to say that is relevant to the first one is that he cracks it open, right? He goes all the way up to the mountaintop, and then he like cracks open the universe, which is dank. But like,
yes,
conveniently, you can just walk out onto the street in the next one. You know, like it's fair enough that like the this world is in roughly the same kind of like relative location, like equivalent location as Earth in another universe. That's feasible.
Yeah.
But like, why is the top of a mountaintop in the same equivalent place as the middle of a city, a tropical city in the other universe? That doesn't really make sense to me. Like, why isn't the gate? Why, like, he's in Svalbard or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is like Russia, right? Or like whatever. It's like far northern Europe or something.
Yes.
And he cracks open this gateway to another world. And then where Lyra pops out is like kind of like South America or some shit.
Yeah, but she's not in, like, we don't explore that world enough to know how like similar or different it is, you know?
No, but it's similar enough that they're both more or less the same world in more or less the same space-time location in their equivalent universes.
But I don't think we know that. You know?
Okay, but this leads me to like a similar question. Oh, you go.
Oh, just like, because that world that they get to first is that like intermediate world where there's only kids, right? Yeah. And like they don't spend that much time there. But isn't there a whole bit where like Will uses the knife and it's like way above ground level and shit?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, can't go here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think, like, they're not all equivalent. Like, in one world, there might be, you know, less wind, so there's less erosion. So, like, even if they all started out exactly the same, they're different now.
The tectonic plates might have moved differently, so that, you know, he's up on a rise or a plateau, but like the other world isn't or whatever. That's feasible. Yeah. But like, don't you think at least like the poles would be in roughly the same? I guess not, whatever. Okay, fair enough. I accept it.
But also like you could imagine that if one of those worlds is like a significantly hotter world, then that tropical zone might be the pole. You know, like in Dune, the poles are the only places they can inhabit because they're the coldest parts of the world, but they're still like desert, you know?
Fair enough. Okay. Also, though, say you crack open a gateway to another universe and they're different, which is most likely, kind of. Either they'd be like extremely similar or extremely different, logically, you know? Or maybe you can only crack open a gateway if it's close enough to you. But whatever. You know, I want to know about how that idea of space-time works, because like the world's spinning, for example, really fast.
Yes.
So like you're cracking open a point in space-time.
Yes.
So is that point attached to the matter of Earth that is spinning and then revolving around the sun? Or is it an absolute point in space-time, in which case the Earth would spin away really quickly, you know? But also...
No, you've muted yourself.
That was the good part, bro. The more important point is that the worlds would probably spin differently. So you might be like at a different point every, you're like moving at thousands of miles a second or whatever. So you're like, you stick your leg out, it's like ripped off. Like it's like quite a deep use of those ideas, but like not quite deep enough, They'd have to be spinning at exactly the same rate in the same place at the same time equivalently.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, it's not like I don't know enough about like string theory. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Is it? Or quantum physics?
I think string theory is a part of quantum physics, right?
I think string is about the way it's like strings are a better explanation than particles, but quantum physics is like more about that level of reality. But anyway, like, I mean, it's not explained in the books really what this like universe is like, because like obviously Will's world and Lyra's world are like, I guess like probably quite recently diverged or something, because they're really, really similar, right? Do you think it's like that they diverge, or that? Do you think it's that they split off from the same universe?
Well, isn't that like that theory that every decision you make, there's another parallel world where the other decision was made?
That sounds like a metaphor to me of like, but in my mind, there are just like different quantum possibilities. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really buy the like many worlds or many universes thing. I kind of think it's more about potential, but maybe you can tap into other potentials that you hadn't tapped into before. But anyway, I also want to...
But like the potential is infinite, Like, I think that's just a way of describing what you're saying, which is that like there is a universe out there where everything has happened or didn't happen.
Yeah.
But like a way to think about it is like, oh, well, instead of you studying that at university, you go to a job. So then there's a universe where this has happened and where this has happened.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think those universes are manifest, because if you think about it in terms of like, say like Hindu knowledge, where like the world that you experience is an illusion based on your consciousness and what you're projecting onto the potential of the universe, then like what is manifest is just based on what, the interplay between your consciousness and your expectation and your limitation and the potential, the infinite potential and infinite matter of space-time. So I don't necessarily think there are universes out there where there's another me going about his life or like whatever. It seems like fantastical to me to image it that way, because I think things are too infinite to be locked down in that way. It doesn't make sense to me, but
yeah, well, so yeah, I see what you mean, because like, even when you've got like Lyra's Oxford and Will's Oxford, like it's not like all the same people are in those two places.
No, but there is some the same
places. Who's the same?
She goes, oh yeah, I've gone ahead now. But
fuck you. You told me I couldn't start it. You dick.
I said I didn't want you to start it so that like you were gonna already have finished it before we even got to here, and then like,
yes, I know. It
was more about in relationship to when we shoot this video rather than in relationship to like, anyway, there's a we should probably deal with that next time. But the other thing I wanted to say though was that like there's an Oxford in Lyra's world and an Oxford in Will's world, which is basically our world, right? We reckon.
Yeah.
And they're more or less the same. From what we know about both worlds, they're like pretty much the same place, right? They have some similar things in them, and they seem to be in like a more or less similar geographic location.
Yeah.
She goes from her Oxford up, way up north to Svalbard.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Where her dad is, pops out into this random other world that's on a tropical country, then pops back over to Oxford, which is the like gateway through the same like space-time location. Like, that's weird to me. Like, that doesn't really seem to be possible. Unless, like...
How does she get to Will's Oxford? There's, like, already a portal open, right?
Yeah, which I think someone made with the subtle knife, one of, like, previous owners. Because the subtle knife's been around for a while, right?
Yeah. I had always kind of thought that the subtle knife was like attached to your thoughts, you know?
Nah, you definitely can't just pop out in whatever location you want. And I think that, you know, that's the whole thing about he cuts the window and they're high up and shit.
Yeah.
You know, he's not like, well, I want to go to McDonald's. He like cuts open a window and then he's like pops out at a McDonald's in a random other universe or whatever.
No, but isn't he like, you know, he can tell where the right place to cut is to get to like where he wants to be.
No, he can tell which one is the right cut for that universe. But I think I think it explains that like if he goes a certain way and then cuts a window there, then the window that comes back in the other place is like a similar distance away and shit. In my memory, I can't remember, but I think there's some shit like that. And because like if you could do that, you know, later on they go to the like spirit world.
Yes.
And then they try and cut a way out, but they can't get out because it's too deep underground in the other reality. If he wanted to just go overground, he would just be like, all right, well, I'll just cut a window overground, you know? So like, it's a bit too convenient. It's just, I get it. It's like for the plot and blah, 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 but it's like a little bit too convenient that like, there's just a window to Oxford.
Yeah, but also like, you know, if she just went through into like Russia, what happens in the book then, you know?
Well, she's not on a mission to meet Will. You know, she's not like, I mean, it's just the only way to explain it is that it's for the plot, because she's on a mission to find out about dust. So like, if she's like committed to, she's like resolved to go and do whatever it takes to do that. She's not looking for Oxford in particular. She's looking for someone that's gonna further her exploration of dust. So like that would be in Svalbard or Russia or like whatever.
Yeah, I guess so. But like logically in our world, she is looking for an English speaking like research.
But it doesn't matter what she's looking for. Her wishes aren't just magically coming true, you know.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just okay. I really need to go to the toilet.
Me too.
Oh, great.
Okay, one thing I wanted to talk about was right at the beginning, like basically in the first scene, where she's hiding in the cabinet and watching the like meeting of only men in the retiring room or whatever, and he like busts out Stanislaus Grumman's head.
Yes.
And it's like the deepest foreshadowing of all time. Like they're already talking about that character, and then he turns out to be someone very important later on.
Who is he?
Okay, don't worry. We'll talk about it next time.
Okay. Stop talking about later.
No, I remembered that during, you know, I remembered it when Lee starts talking about, nah, there's no way that like the Tartars killed Grumman, even if he is dead, because he was one of them and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh yeah, he's someone.
Huh. I don't remember that at all.
He's cool. He might be my favorite character. Though actually, I really like Lee.
Or Stanislaw.
Stanislaus. But I really like Lee too. He's such a good character.
He's really cool.
With the hair demon, so good.
Yeah, one of my most vivid memories from these books is when he dies.
Oh yeah, I've been remembering that too.
No.
No.
So cool.
Don't even want to meet him. Yeah, he's so cool. He's like got this kind of like air of being like a logical, practical guy. No, I'm just doing it for the money. I need to know about what I'm investing. Like if I'm going to commit to this thing, if it's going to be a war, then I need to pay a lot more, blah, blah. But then actually he just like goes way, way out of his way to do the right thing and ends up dying.
Yes. He's cool. I really like him. I really like all the Egyptians. I really like Fardakorum. I think he's really cool.
He's dank. I don't really like. I like the Egyptians, but I feel like they're not really fleshed out as characters. Like they're kind of like the Egyptians, you know?
Yes, they are. But they're kind of like, yeah. You know, they're like a practical, good-natured, do whatever they need to do bunch.
Yeah. They're kind of like the mafia or something, eh?
Yeah, a little bit, eh?
Yeah.
But also like they're gypsies, right? So they're like separate from our society. They've got their own rules.
But gypsies aren't on boats in our world, right?
No.
Just checking. I know. I thought maybe you didn't know.
No. Who else is in the book?
Well, Mrs. Coulter, man.
Yeah.
She has like no redeeming qualities, eh? Both her parents like almost have no redeeming qualities as humans, like in their personalities. Like they're both just like ruthlessly ambitious.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like that's true to life. But I kind of remembered Lord Asriel being a bit more like
not a dick.
Some sort of like some redemption or like
same. I kind of remembered them both a little bit, but then it wasn't on rereading it. He didn't have any affection for her, and like Mrs. Coulter didn't even. There's that bit where she saves her from the guillotine, and then like makes her a chamomile and shit. But then it kind of turns out that she's just after the alethiometer.
Yeah,
which is weird because like, why does she just want to stop Lord Asriel from getting it, or does she actually want it? Because like she doesn't have any use for it.
The alethiometer.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's all about. Because, like, Lord Asriel doesn't even want the alethiometer by the time it gets to him.
I don't think he ever wanted it. I think that was like Lyra thought that was the thing that she was supposed to take him that he wanted. But actually she was taking him Roger. And she just misread all the signs because she just assumed that he wanted the alethiometer. And then everyone else assumed that too because, like, it made sense because it's like a powerful object and he maybe needed to divine something in order to do his, like, experiment or whatever.
Yeah, well, I had kind of assumed that there would have been a point where he would have wanted the alethiometer to be able to ask how to like open a portal. And
but he didn't need it, bro.
No, he didn't. He just sorted it out anyway. I assumed she wanted it for that reason, to be able to like figure out what would work. Because I don't think she wanted to stop Lord Asriel. She wanted to do it herself so that then, like, her and the Magisterium can control it rather than it being, like, just a thing that's in the world.
How would they control it? It's, like, blasted wide open.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's, like, not just, like, a little window. It's, like, the whole landscape is merged at a certain point.
Yeah, I guess if they had been in control of the bears, they probably could have kept people somewhat away.
Maybe. But I think it's like quite a huge area.
I guess so, like, how do people even, like, how are people going to find out about it? You know? Like,
Yeah. I mean,
like
because the
Lord
whole
Asriel-
the whole environment's changing and shit, and then it would like trickle
yeah,
down.
but like, who goes up to Svalbard? You know?
Lee.
Yeah,
Explorers.
obviously Lee now, but like, you know, if the Magisterium had opened it, in theory, they probably could have kept like a tighter lid on who would know about it.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I mean, if they had ended up being the ones to have made it, then maybe like a bunch of the other people who know about it now wouldn't have known about it.
Yeah. Because also, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I was really, really waiting for that scene where Mrs. Coulter opens the other container
Yeah.
and the thing gets her. As soon as like that bug appeared, I was like, it's gonna happen.
I didn't really remember that. I kind of remembered it as it was happening. But also, I
Like
thought at that time, why doesn't the bug go after Lyra? Because like that's kind of the point.
I thought that too when I was reading it again. I was like, there's no way that bug just goes straight for not the target when the target is like a couple meters away.
But you know how they said it's like a spirit, and if you destroy it, then the spirit like goes wild and like devours whatever is around it. Like maybe it had gotten too pent up and like just went wild, and she was right there. You know, she was right there opening it, and it just went blah. Like no,
Yeah, 'cause
she
she
was
really-
fine, and now that's no problem. It should still be flying around.
Yes. It should be following her to the other world and shit.
Yeah. Not sure about that.
Yeah, what is it supposed to do? I thought it was just like a spy.
Yeah. It's not explained. It's not an important plot point at that point.
It kind of is though, you know?
Nah, it's like a minor plot point.
Yeah, but like, you know, it lets her get away and get out of Bolvanger and save all the kids. I really liked when the Egyptians are having their meeting. Like, I like John Farr, and I like that there's that guy who's like, oh, are we going to save all the non-Egyptian kids? And he's like, do you suggest that we go up there and we take the Egyptian kids and leave all the other kids? Like,
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
And then the same guy says some shit again, eh? He's like, tries to say like, I can't remember what it was, but some other kind of like trying to back out kind of shit. And then he's like,
Yeah.
shut the fuck up.
Yeah, he's like a real coward guy.
Just drop kick that guy off.
Fuck that guy.
That Bowengar shit is like so cruel and fucked up and like distorted.
Yeah.
Like, and even though like I don't have that sense of like having a demon and shit, it's like I don't know. Yeah, like you were saying about it being so immersive. Like when they run into the boy who's like Tony, is it Tony? Yeah.
Tony.
Who doesn't have his demon, and he's just like so gone and like lost, and like there's no way for him to like regain his grasp on reality and shit without that like other part of him and shit. It's like, how could you do that to another human and shit?
they really build it, like he really builds it all so well, because there's all these little bits in the book leading up to, like, before you know what they're doing, just about like Lyra's connection with Pan.
Yeah.
Like, really building the whole thing. And then when you meet that kid, you're like, fuck.
And he's holding on to the fish. He's only got the dried
it's
fish.
so sad. And when the Egyptians don't realize, and he like feeds it to one of the dogs, and Lyra's like, that was all he had. That was all he had. And it's like, no. But yeah, there's also all the stuff about like, you know, like she notices that something's weird about the staff at Bolvangar.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of a bit like distant and weird and cold and not really there. And then she realizes, and she's like, whoa. But also there's that bit where like, you know, after she's been saved from the guillotine and Mrs. Coulter's like trying to reason it to her, and she's like saying all these good things about it. And she's like, if it's so good, why wouldn't you let them do it to me? And it's like, yeah.
Well, you know. Yeah.
Because it's actually a horrific thing to do.
It's crazy. Oh, man. The metaphors are just like so good too. Like people just freaking out about possibilities and doing real weird, fucked up shit to try and like hide from uncertainty and shit. But it's like dust is obviously a good thing. Like it's obviously like the underlying force of the universe or of life or whatever. It's like I can't understand how they think it's like the source of evil.
I know, but I feel like there's a bit where someone's explaining that like we don't know if dust is new or if it's always been here. And it's like, what does it matter? Like probably what's happened is that it has always been there and you've only just noticed it. And now you're like, oh, like this thing, you know?
Why would it be new? Like, it seems like really fundamental to the whole, you know, like they've tied it in with the original sin, right? Which is like Adam and Eve / Pandora's box. But it's like, yeah, okay, then maybe in that case it's the source of the possibility of evil. But then it's also the source of the possibility of everything that we experience that is also like beauty and love and passion and whatever.
Yeah, but that's also like, you know, like the Christian original sin myth is like, you've done a bad thing, you're going to be punished for it now for eternity.
Well, that's
like,
the way it's interpreted now. Like, I don't think the story originally meant that. But yeah.
No, but I think that like that's what the magisterium has interpreted it as well. But like, you know, Pandora's box is so different because it's like,
you're a woman, you caused everything to be bad.
But also, I don't know. I mean, even in the Greek myth, it's acknowledged that that was like a premeditated act. You know, like in Christianity, it's like there's this apple tree or like this fruit tree. I don't think it says apple, but don't touch it. But like in the Greek myth, Zeus is mad at Prometheus, or he's mad at them. So he's like, I'm going to give you this object that is so tempting that there's no way you will be able to resist opening it, and therefore release all this bad stuff into the world. Like, Zeus is the problem. But also it has the element of like, there's hope left in the box. Like, I think there's a few things left in the box in the original myth, and it's like hope and like something else.
Yeah, I don't think they're vastly different, you know, like it's still the whole dynamic of like, hey, here's this really amazing thing, or like, here's this mystery, whatever you do, don't touch it. And then of course you go and touch it because like saying that itself is the most irresistible thing or whatever. But the fact that it's like, there's like God and Satan or just God doing both roles is the only difference, you know?
Yeah, well, I guess just like in Christianity, there is God and Satan, but like in the Greek myths, they're all like they've got their own failings, all the gods. Like,
well, in pretty much every other belief system, there's like a variety of forces in the world.
Yeah. Well, like they're a more like holistic person.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, like
anyway.
The idea that it's like, yeah, we want to delete all evil, but we'll give up all wonder to also not have evil.
Personality.
Well, it's like
all of those staff are like flat, like robots, you know.
But that is so the Christian approach. It's like just be as bland and meek and mundane as possible so that you don't have to deal with either. Whereas I feel like true spirituality and like real kind of like virtuous living or whatever is approaching evil front on so that you can continually have more chances to prove your goodness, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, like not even like demonizing it like that, you know, like in a lot of like witchcraft spirituality stuff, it's like it's shadow work, you know? Like it's not a bad thing, it's just a part of you that like it's ingrained in you to like be scared of and hate and shit, you know?
Yeah, and it's only in integrating the shadow that you achieve unity in yourself and then transmute it into gold, you know? It's the yin and yang.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny, like I've actually talked to a couple of Christians recently, like people who are in Japan, and like that just doesn't translate to them. Like I've got this view of Christianity and like that's my way of like seeing how Christianity is cool and good because it's got that same base as all the other cool.
I don't got it. I didn't get it.
You didn't hear me or you didn't understand it?
No, I didn't hear you.
Why?
No, my internet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like I've been kind of exploring all this kind of stuff about Christianity and like kind of religious history across a range of things. And like they all have those same elements and they all kind of mean the same thing. And you can see what the kind of overarching purpose of spirituality and religion is. But then like you talk to a Christian about it and they're like, no, God and Jesus and the Bible. And it's like, bro, like look at the evidence. They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying that like the darkness is in you, God is in you. You've got to deal with the darkness to like elevate the God part and prove the God part to yourself and the world and make that the prominent part or whatever, you know? And it's like, no, God, big man in the sky, humans, nothing, do what you're told and avoid Satan. It's like, where did that come from? Like, where did that interpretation come from and like
it's
become
crazy,
the main thing?
It's like, oh, I'm gonna live by this like rule book, like this set of instructions, and so long as I do that and I like repent for my sins, then I'm fine and I'm good and I don't need to think about it at all.
Yeah, I don't have to take personal responsibility. But it's like personal responsibility is the philosopher's stone that transmutes evil into good or whatever.
Yeah, but that's like hard, you know?
Yeah. But it's I think it's harder in the long run to keep avoiding.
Yeah. When then you get what like most church organizations have mutated into, which is like
pedophiles,
completely abstracted from everything the Bible was like about, you know?
Yeah.
Like Jesus was like, you know, love the whores and all the like fucked up
lepers and shit.
And then now it's like they're the worst thing and like anti-gay and anti-trans and all that shit. It's like you're not really vibing with like Jesus would hate you, you know?
Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't, because that was his whole thing, but he'd be like, you aren't doing it right.
When you say that to like a real, like a committed Christian though, it actually just doesn't resonate. Like they like go blank and then they're like, no, it doesn't say that in the Bible. It's like, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, but I also thought it was like a really interesting like dynamic that the church is still kind of dominating everything, but science is also still happening within the church, like it was like 500 years ago or more, you know?
Yeah, it's like, you know, maybe that's like the splitting point, you know, between our world.
Oh yeah,
and
like
their world.
Newton or something.
Yeah.
Newton, like when the apple fell on his head, he died. And a universe was born. It was an act of God.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I like... Yeah, they've gone a real different way with technology, eh? Like that Oxford.
Well, it's like a little bit different, and it's a bit behind.
Yeah.
But they're more advanced in their kind of like spiritual technology, which is really cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like way cooler.
Yeah.
IMO.
That's really cool. I really like the Jordan College complex as a like an environment / like Oxford as this like, you know, university city where like everything revolves around the scholarship and like the kind of like differences between the different universities and shit. I was like, man, I would love to live in a place like that.
Yeah, when like the descriptions of Jordan specifically are so cool. Like all the crypts and like, you know, when she goes and she swaps the coins of two of them and then like those spirits haunted. Visit her and are like, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's so cool. And it's such a cool idea that it's still like, I guess it's like more churchy, you know? More like a monastery kind of
it's
thing.
more like grounded in that kind of like history of institutions or something, which I think is really cool too. You know, it's kind of like Hogwarts. It's like a more realistic Hogwarts.
Yeah.
But I think that's cool too, because like I think like tradition and lineage is actually an important part of education. And like we've lost that, and we've just got this like fucking disconnected like random bits of information that you have to memorize and say back at the end of the term or whatever. Like we don't really have like there's like the limitations of tradition are also what give it context and give it like traction in the world. Like I think having that as a base and then diverging from it is the best balance or something. Which is what Lyra does, motherfucker.
Bitch. Yeah, that traditional knowledge that is way more like practical, but still, you know, like actually I was reading before Living with the Moon, which I think I talked to you about, which is about the Maramataka. Yeah. And it's like, it's so fucking cool because it's like traditional knowledge, but it's like, it's actually just, no, I mean that like, you know, people are like, oh, well, like it's not like scientific, it's not peer reviewed, but it is. It's like
over hundreds of
years of practical contextual knowledge that has been trialed, you know, and like there's all these bits where they're talking about like there's some nights where like some people think, you know, like the elders some of them would think, oh, like maybe it is a good time to be planting or weeding or something. And you'd see them like trialing it, you know, like they would do it and see how it went. And then other people wouldn't do it and see like, you know, it's like, that is scientific and better than all the shit that we've been doing only over the last like 150 years that like, you know,
But bro, it's like, wait, so you haven't put this thing in a situation that would never occur naturally to test it, you know, like an environment where you like that's completely neutral that you're never going to come up against in real life, and therefore it's not valid. It's like, what? Like Chinese medicine is like that too. People are like, you know, like it's in like the alternative medicine section at bookshops and shit, and it's like, it's not alternative. It's been around for way longer, and it's like way more. It's 5,000 years of scientific trial and error.
When it's like contextual, you know, like there's all those ideas about how like wolf packs work and that there's like an alpha and a beta and all that shit. And it's like become this real like ingrained knowledge. But none of that, like that is the way wolf packs work when they're in captivity. Like that is not how they function in nature, you know? And it's like what is the point of that knowledge, you know? Yeah. Like that's not relevant and it's not applicable to other parts of life.
Yeah, knowledge has really jumped the shark, bro. Like we're like going, like we're obsessed with knowledge for knowledge's sake, as if we're going to gain something from having more detail or whatever. When you know, Holly, you don't really, but she like said this thing to me about the difference between like indigenous in Australia, indigenous science or knowledge, and like Western modern science and shit, is that like Aboriginal people gain knowledge by observing something from the outside, and in the West we gain knowledge by like cutting something up. And it's like, what are you going to gain from cutting up and seeing how the organs work, you know? Like you might get context for how organs work in general or something, but it's like, what are you going to do with that? Like, what do you need that? Like you need a knowledge of how a lizard behaves in an environment because you're in the same environment and you're going to have to like live with those dynamics and shit. But like you don't have to, you're not really living with the dynamics of like how it produces bile or whatever.
Yeah, well, I think also like science. Oh,
this is some science right now. In the natural habitat.
Like Western science, I think, is so like ingrained with some of those like Christian values as well, where it's like good and evil, you know, like in the context of Australia. Yeah, well, it's like fire is bad, but actually like the First Nations people know that like fire in moderation, like back burning, is how you prevent those like devastating fires that wipe out everything in the land.
Yeah, and like in Chinese medicine, there are 5 elements, and you've got to balance them, whether it's like in your body or in the environment or in the house or whatever, in order to have a healthy environment. If it's too damp, then it's going to be like not healthy. If there's too much fire, it's not going to be healthy, you know? Yeah. It's like that.
Yeah, it's not like, it's just like not, you know, vilifying something. It's like all these things need to be here, like they play an important role.
It's qualitative knowledge, not quantitative. Like it doesn't matter what, like how you measure something, it matters like the way it behaves and how you can use that for a positive effect or whatever. Anna. And that's our experimental theology for the week.
Ooh.
Yeah, like Philip Pullman's like, I'm actually just gonna like fact check this, but there's like this whole thing about him being like an atheist and shit. But it's like his insights are so deep. I'm like, why are you bothering to identify as an atheist when you've got such deep views of the world? Like, he's starting to talk about this shit that is like, they talk about, I mean, like in quantum physics, you know, the idea that like your consciousness or awareness or observation affects the outcome. And that's in like spiritual traditional knowledge, that's because like consciousness is part of the fundamental makeup of the universe or whatever. Like it's a fundamental part of life. It's not just like this weird accident that's happening in the brain. It's like
Yeah.
sometimes even represented as like a substance or whatever, like dust. But in Qigong too, like they talk about how you're like cultivating the substance of consciousness so that you can use it intentionally. So the effect of your consciousness is like kind of like under your control or whatever, not just like
True.
you're like, say you get overwhelmed by your emotions, then that's like controlling the way the quality of your consciousness manifests in the world. And so like consciousness is almost like equivalent to the idea of God, you know, like this underlying force of the universe that everything else is responsive to or whatever. But so he's got these concepts in the Northern Lights and shit that are like that, you know, that like, oh, this is kind of in the second book, sorry, but they what they're exploring in Will's world in like physics or whatever is like, and they've got that machine that that reads dust, but they call it shadow, you know, and then she lets Lyra have a go on it. Like right at the beginning, you must remember, she finds that physicist in Will's world, and then like this is even in my memory. I'm not saying this from reading it, but like, and she's saying that the amazing thing that they've discovered is that this like shadow, which is dust / dark matter or whatever, responds to us, and it's observing us, and it like it's conscious or whatever.
Right.
So it's kind of like the consciousness of the universe. And you can find different ways of tapping into it. And she says that one of them is the I Ching, and that like different cultures have different, you know, divination practices of like tapping into this higher consciousness, like tarot and shit, or like meditation or prayer or whatever. But so he's got all that content in these books. And then he's like, yeah, but I'm an atheist and like I hate religion and I don't want to like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's buzzy, eh? I don't think I actually know that much about him.
Nah, I don't either. I'd like happened.
But I think, yeah, hasn't he done stuff with like Richard Dawkins and stuff? And like,
yeah. Perspective on religion. There's a whole section of it. Let's read it. Although Pullman has stated he is a Church of England atheist, whatever the fuck that is, and a 1662 Book of Common Prayer atheist, because that's the tradition I was brought up in, he has also said that he is technically an agnostic. He has singled out elements of Christianity for criticism. If there is a God and he is, as the Christians describe him, then he deserves to be put down and rebelled against. Whatever. He has also acknowledged that the same could be said of all religions. Pullman has also referred to himself as knowingly of the Devil's Party, a reference to William Blake's revisionist view of Milton in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. Pullman is a supporter of Humanists UK and an honorary associate of the National Secular Society. Like, he's like going out of his way to be secular, even though he's got all these like spiritual insights that are like, or insights that are valid in a spiritual sense.
Yeah.
I guess people just get stunted by being brought up Christian and then they like are resistant to it for the rest of their lives or something. That's the problem with Richard Dawkins as well. Oh yeah, here we go. In 2010, Pullman, along with 54 other public figures, including Stephen Fry, who is also a real kind of like dick about, like he's just got real dicky views about it that are kind of this like vindictive, like vengeful kind of approach. Professor Richard Dawkins, Terry Pratchett, Jonathan Miller, and Ken Follett signed an open letter published in The Guardian stating their opposition to Pope Benedict XVI being given the honor of a state visit to the UK. I mean, sure, like, whatever, the Pope is like a bullshit figure, but who cares? Like, you've got better shit to do with your time than like rail against Christianity.
Wouldn't get 50 of your atheist mates to write a letter, you know?
I don't know.
It sounds like he's like kind of got all this like, I don't know, like ideas and stuff, but is still like living a real like Christian centric life, you know? Like it's about him being like, I don't believe in Christianity, rather than like,
I do believe in all this cool other shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like the view in the books is like it's not really like it's against all the corruption in the church, but it's not against religion itself or like spirituality itself. Like you don't get a sense of there being like bitter about the actual exploration of spirituality. And like the states that they have, like the state that Lara goes into to read the alethiometer and shit, and later the state that Will goes into to use the knife, where like he says shit like I haven't gotten up to this yet, but like he's like putting his mind or his spirit like down his arm and then feeling it into his fingers, which is like something that you do in martial arts and shit. Like that's like a part of martial arts, like merging consciousness with the body and shit. It's like real deep shit. It's like real like balanced, like accurate spiritual knowledge and readings and shit. So I don't know. It's like it's confusing to me that he's also got that like kind of shallow view about religion. As if like the corrupt stuff in religion, it's not religion's corruption, it's human corruption that emerges in like all different spaces.
Yeah, that's not like exclusive to religion. It's just like a ripe environment for like power, you know?
Yeah, and the same with the government and the police and the hospital, or like anywhere that we kind of build hierarchies about shit. Yeah, I saw this thing. Yeah, well, he put out those other books like a few years ago, didn't he? Was that a while ago?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, the second one came out 4 years ago.
The thing I saw Stephen Fry was saying was like an interviewer asked him, if you died and then you turned up at the pearly gates to be judged or whatever, or you're like faced with God, like what would you say? And he was like, how dare you? You know, like you created this universe and you created it to have like child cancer and shit. It's like, bro, you just made up that interpretation of the Christian God and the Christian worldview and shit. Like he didn't go about like creating little pockets of suffering. It's like he just created the universe, and then it was humans who decided to bring it into sin, you know, which is like for better or for worse, you know, for our own sense of experience or whatever. But it's like, why are you making up this like pettier, more limited, more bullshit view of Christianity that Christians don't even really even the most basic Christians don't really have that view? Like, so it's like, but then you're getting angry about that and responding to that. It's just like retarded.
Yeah. It's real stupid.
Fuck. Okay, whatever. You can just go play with Minnie now.
I'm a bit distracted by the little cat. Look at this little face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was cool.
Yeah. Just looking at the chapters of what else happened. Yeah, I really vividly remember that bit where she gets to where Lord Asriel is being held captive and he's like furious.
Yeah, same.
It's like, oh no.
But then he sees Roger and he's like,
he's like, oh, hey, come in.
Just kidding. I was like, don't worry about that.
Oh my God, I was just so surprised. Yeah, sad.
He's a cool character,
so
though.
Much to get Roger back, though. You know, it's just like such a blow.
But then they just fall off that thing too. It's like, I mean, he was gonna do it anyway, but then in the end, it was like an accident.
Yeah. Oh,
I know, Roger. Little Roger.
Yeah, it's just so sad. I don't know, like she's so brave at the end and stuff, but you know, she's like potentially leaving her world forever. And it's like, oh, Lyra, you know? Oh,
Yeah. Roger gets replaced by Will though, so
sad.
yeah. But I feel like the tragedy that happens in those books has meaning, whereas like we were talking about the stuff that happens in Harry Potter, like, you know, like Fred dies and like Lupin and Tonks both die. It's like it's kind of just like random. It's like, oh, I can't have it being too happy. It's like it's not really like,
Yeah.
doesn't have a sense of reality.
Yeah. I guess though, I don't know. Like arguably what's happening in Harry Potter is a war, and that death is like meaningless and pointless and stupid. Anyway, you know?
Yeah, it didn't really have like a traction for me or like tension, you know? Like it didn't make me feel anything because it wasn't really like, it didn't feel like connected with the story or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like the deaths in Harry Potter, they were like upsetting because it's sad. But like some of the deaths, like Lee's death in these books, like that stayed with me for all this time. And it's still like a part of the book that I, in meeting Lee, was like, you know, like anguished about, because he's like a fully fledged character that has an important role in like Lyra's life and journey in the books.
Yeah. I mean, it might not be the deaths themselves, but just the way it's written that's lacking, you know? Like, I mean, the way the characters are written too, like, the way the characters are written in his Dark Materials are like, really make you feel like it's a person and that there's a reason that they're there, you know? Like, I don't know, you get involved with who they are. Whereas in Harry Potter, it's kind of like they're just a cast.
Yes. When like, I think I remember Lee's death so well because it's written, he knows, like he can feel he's dying and he's talking to Hestia? Is that what she's called? Hester.
Yeah. I think it's Hester.
Yeah, I think it is.
Fact check.
What's Hestia? And you know, like he's saying goodbye and stuff, and it's like, oh, you know.
Yeah, like the surrounding responses and the surrounding narrative and shit are like a lot more rich and real, I think is the difference. You know, it's like when Fred dies, they're all just like, oh no! You know, like it's like,
oh,
it's like,
Fred.
it's like, you know that thing people say about writing fiction? It's like you need to show things, not just describe them. It's like they just kind of like, it's like Harry felt shock, he felt blank. It's like, oh, all right, who cares? Like, it doesn't like, it's not visceral.
If you say so. Yeah. Whereas you really feel like, you know, like Lyra has all those thoughts thinking back to the first like few months with Mrs. Coulter, and she's like really like shocked and horrified and disgusted and confused that she like loved her so much and thought the world of her, and then now hates her. And it's like, yeah, you've really illustrated how confusing that can feel, where like your first impression of someone is so wrong, you know? Oh, they're just better. Just better books.
I think you just like, whatever understanding you have the world, it just comes across in whatever you write or make and shit. And like, no amount of technique or device can really compensate for it anyway. Like if you have that feeling in you, then you can put it into a story. But if you don't, you know, like if your kind of view of the world is like relatively shallow, then you're only going to be able to really explain stuff within that scope. As we've seen with J.K. Rowling, like not really having the deepest grip of world issues and shit. in the last few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, now we're building up a cast of people who have written important series of books and have a kind of like distorted political bent. So maybe that's going to be the theme that we continue on with.
That's our thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, and cats. And we're going to be back probably pretty soon with the subtle knife because can hardly hold ourselves back from it.
Yeah, I totally like devoured Northern Lights. It's like I just gotta keep going.
The subtle knife is definitely the one for me. Like it's like the strongest in my memory, and it kind of like meant the most to me.
I think the ideas or like the things that happen in the third one were always it for me. You know, like the going to the spirit world, and I think, anyway.
I think I've wanted a magic knife since I read the subtle knife, or even since I saw it, since I saw the book.
True.
You know, the original hardcover with the like green cover with the knife on the front?
Oh, I've got, I think, the like version of that's the paperback one.
Yeah.
Which was red.
Yeah. But I thought recently, I'll talk about it next time, maybe, yeah. Talk about it next time.
Yeah, it's got an angel on its hilt.
I know.
Oh my god.
Okay, that's the preview for next time. And stay tuned. Dare to donk. Okay, bye.